Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. Today I'll be speaking on cases of orbital foreign body and when to intervene. Just a minute.
चालू है
इसमें भी अटेंडेंस का होगा ना.
May I please request the other participants either to leave the forum or please put yourself on mute.
So approximately 16% of cases of orbital trauma that are encountered in clinical practice are associated with the foreign body. And many of these cases may have rather unusual presentations. Some of these cases of orbital foreign body may accompany trivial trauma, especially in children. The history might be ambiguous, and the diagnosis and management of intraorbital foreign bodies often proves to be a conundrum for most ophthalmologists. So I'll be just sharing some cases with you. This is a 4-year-old male child who came to us with features of right-sided periocular edema, orbital inflammation, impaired motility, a relative afferent pupillary defect, and a pale optic disc. Clinically, the picture was that of an orbital cellulitis. Purulent discharge was also present over there, and which was on microbiological examination, it was found to be Staph aureus. The patient was started on intravenous antibiotics. There was resolution of edema, improvement of motility, but there was persistence of a discharging sinus on the superomedial part of the orbit. So we reviewed the scans, and then we realized that there was a relatively radiolucent linear object running along the medial wall of the right orbit from anterior to posterior. Upon further questioning the parents did give a history of injury to the right eye while playing 5 months back. So we planned to do a surgical exploration. Now, intraoperatively, we found that it was a plastic foreign body about 3 inches long and half an inch wide, and was identified as the rear side of a plastic ballpoint pen. After the removal of the foreign body, the discharging sinus resolved, and the symptoms were totally gone, although the vision was still less because of the optic atrophy that had occurred as a result of the trauma in this child. There's another child who was a 10-year-old male who presented with history of trauma with a ball pen while playing, and there was sudden diminution of vision in the right eye along with drooping of the eyelid. On examination, there was no light perception in the eye. There was an entry wound below the lower eyelid with limited ocular motility in all the gazes, a relative afferent pupillary defect, disc pallor, and a hypoesthesia along the right cheek. Initial non-contrast CT was inconclusive. A repeat CT and MRI were done, and a linear non-metallic foreign body could be seen extending all the way up to the apex. So it was diagnosed to be a case of right traumatic orbital apex syndrome, and surgical intervention was recommended. You can see the scans here. The foreign body, a relatively radiolucent foreign body, which was missed on the initial CT, going all the way up to the apex, and here on an MRI also, and it was also impinging on the optic nerve. Now this child, the poor prognosis was also explained while advising surgery to this patient because of the disc findings and the pupillary RAPT, and they refused surgical intervention, but he was given steroids, and the movements did improve following a course of oral steroids. Now, this is another case of a 36-year-old female with a history of recurrent swelling of the left lower eyelid. There was purulent discharge from a pus point near the medial canthus, but the syringing was patent. And on USG and NCCT, we could not find any abnormality. So an incision was given near the area of pus discharge, and a wooden fragment was isolated, which was about 1 inch long. Thereafter, the patient said that she had some history of trauma while cutting wood about 8 months back. This is another case, a 30-year-old male who came to us with a history of injury with a BB pellet can. In fact, he had BB injury sites all over the body, and he was referred to us for evaluation. So he did not have any ophthalmic symptoms or any complaints as such, but we did see an entry wound at the left glabellar region. On NCCT, a metallic foreign body was identified adjacent to the medial rectus muscle, and surgical intervention was undertaken. Now, this foreign body was a BB pellet, but during the surgery, there was posterior migration of the BB pellet, as the patient was rather asymptomatic and BB pellet is an inert object. We did not seek any further intervention and going into the posterior part of the orbit. So one can see that in many cases of orbital foreign body, there might not be any definite history of trauma at the time of presentation, or there may be history of relatively trivial trauma in which many of us might not suspect a foreign body. And this becomes very difficult in case of children who are not able to give a history, and sometimes the history is very ambiguous. So we should also know that foreign bodies in the orbit can have a very diverse spectrum of clinical presentation, such as orbital cellulitis or an orbital abscess, an orbital hematoma, a persistent discharging sinus, or in the form of an orbital apex syndrome, a supraorbital fissure syndrome, and injury to the optic nerve can result in optic atrophy. So as far as the imaging is concerned, plain X-ray is useful in identifying metallic foreign bodies, but aluminium might be missed. B-scan ultrasonography requires, it is an observer-dependent technique, and while foreign bodies might be identified in experienced hands, it might be difficult, especially in many cases where there is a lot of inflammation and fibroadipose tissue growth. On computed tomography, and also B-scan is not useful for posterior orbit and anything that is located near the apex. As far as computed tomography is concerned, it is considered to be investigation of choice for a suspected intraorbital foreign body and enables us an accurate localization of high density foreign bodies, especially metal and glass. And it is said that it has been seen that about 0.3 mm size up to 0.3 mm size of metal foreign body and 0.5 mm size of glass foreign body can be identified. Now, another very challenging thing is wood, as we saw in our cases too, which is a relatively low density object and becomes very difficult to identify it on a computed tomography. It is because, and that wood density also differs on the nature of that wood. Like dry wood is hypodense and it mimics air, and fresh wood is isodense and may mimic fat. Now, plastic foreign body in one of our cases was also not identified on initial scans, and it was again identified later on only because of its variable radiolucency and is seen to often evade detection on imaging. Magnetic resonance imaging should be sought only after one has ruled out a metallic foreign body, and it does enable a better assessment of soft tissue damage, especially when we are trying to see the extent of damage at the orbital apex. Wood is seen to be more relatively more easily identified on MRI and is hypointense relative to fat and is more discernible on a T1 weighted imaging. So basically, any case of suspected orbital foreign body, anti-tetanus prophylaxis and antibiotics should be given, and the decision to remove should be weighed against the risk of iatrogenic damage. Organic foreign bodies are often associated with infection and intense inflammation, and it is advisable that they should be removed. Copper also, even though it is a metal, it also leads to intense inflammatory reaction. Iron can be inert, but it can also lead to siderosis over a period of time, the release of iron from the foreign body. And if it is not removed at the initial time presentation, then one should do a routine ERG to assess for any early signs of siderosis, and at that point of time it is mandatory to remove it. BB pellet, as we saw in one of our patients, is generally well tolerated over a prolonged period of time. But yes, definite any metallic foreign body, even if it is inert, removal of that actually removes the contraindication for a magnetic resonance imaging. For foreign bodies that are located at the orbital apex, a transcranial and a transnasal or transethmoidal approach may be adopted with collaboration with neurosurgeons or ENT surgeons. These days, number of image guided systems have been developed that acquire a precise that give us a rather precision in terms of isolating the foreign body intraoperatively and causing minimal collateral damage to these structures. And we advise a tailored approach, as each and every case might be different, and the choice to intervene and the approach of intervention might differ in each and every case. We published our findings and the number of cases that we had seen in this paper, which was published later last year. So to sum up, in any case of suspected orbital foreign body, we are supposed to do a thorough assessment, and NCCT of the orbit is considered to be the initial imaging modality of choice. When it is inconclusive, or if there is definite evidence of organic foreign body and a metal foreign body has been ruled out, one may go for a magnetic resonance imaging. Before that, you're supposed to start broad spectrum antibiotics, anti-tetanus prophylaxis. In case of a foreign body that is organic in nature, surgical removal should be done. For inorganic foreign bodies, if there is persistent inflammation and it is amenable to easy surgical removal with optic nerve compression, if optic nerve compression is there, then surgical removal should be preferred. For foreign bodies that are very inert, posteriorly located, and the risk of iatrogenic damage is more than the risk of retention, one may opt for a conservative management. Now, it is important to note that organic foreign body, especially wood, we should do a post-operative check MRI, because many a times splinters and small residual fragments are retained even after removal. And yes, for iron of foreign body, definite surgery. If it is not done, then it is important to follow up these patients, as we had discussed previously.